Welcome to Policy on Demand. I'm Sindhu Blume. It is the week of February 23rd, and this is your Monday briefing. President Trump will deliver the annual State of the Union address before Congress tomorrow, February 24th. And this follows last week's Supreme Court decision on tariffs imposed under IEEPA. Beth Bell and Scott McCandless are here to share their insights on both of those topics. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you, Sindhu.
So let's start with the IEEPA decision, Scott. In a 6-3 decision in the court held that the president is not authorized to impose tariffs. And at this point, roughly $20 billion, sometimes more, in tariffs have been collected each month. Following the decision, President Trump said he would impose 10% tariffs on all countries under the 1974 Trade Act. I know that's something you know a lot about, and there are a slew of questions and topics. But could you start with what are businesses doing or considering right now in response to this decision?
Sure. The biggest question, Sindhu, with regard to this decision is if it is in fact illegal to have imposed these tariffs from the very beginning, then doesn't that presumably mean that refunds would be available to anyone who had paid these tariffs over the course of the last many months? Now, if, as you said, the tariffs have been amounting to $20 billion per month, there are some estimates of anywhere from 120 to as high as over $160 billion collected so far. I mean, enormous sums that we're talking about here. That could be an extremely high administrative burden for the administration to pay back some of these tariffs. And as one of the justices even noted in a dissenting opinion, some of the importers of record who might be eligible for the refunds might have already passed on some of those costs, either further higher up their supply chain in some kind of pricing arrangement with their suppliers, or further down the supply chain with their consumers. So would that mean that some businesses might be getting a windfall? It's an open question, and there are enormous numbers of open questions here with regard to the refund process, but that is the biggest one. There are some procedures under which you might be able to affirmatively sue the administration to try to get your refunds back. Others where they might just say that there will be an administrative process that will roll this out. That will be up to the lower court. The Supreme Court only made the legal decision with regard to the authority under IEEPA, which they said the president does not have, as you noted. However, it will be up to the Court of International Trade, the lower court, to try to figure out how to unwind this, and what exactly they come up with will be a huge open question. In the meantime, businesses have to wrestle with some basic financial accounting issues, whether to disclose that or change any disclosures they've already made about financial statement impact, and not yet ready to book this, presumably, but some considerations around financial accounting will have to be considered with their advisors in the meantime.
All right. And with respect to the 10% tariffs from the 1974 Act, when does that take effect?
That takes effect as of midnight, really 12:01 a.m. Eastern time on Tuesday, the 24th. So Monday night, once the clock goes past midnight, these will go into effect. Now, he's using a section called Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974, which allows up to 15% tariffs, but for only 150 days. Interestingly, he did not go to 15%. Rather, he said, as you noted, that he would go to 10%. But after 150 days, they will expire. So in the meantime, the U.S. Trade Representative's Office has said that they will be proceeding with Section 301 investigations, which can be much more durable and will likely take some of the 122 10% tariffs and, if not make them permanent, then at least make them long-lasting. So we can watch for that process to roll out over the next couple of months. And we should also note that in the executive orders implementing this new 10% tariff, there are a variety of exceptions. For instance, USMCA, US-Canada, Mexico agreement goods that are qualifying for that agreement will not be subject to the 10%. And there are a wide variety of other goods, from some agricultural products like beef and tomatoes to certain electronics to some vehicles and light passenger trucks, and critical minerals and some other natural resources that are not otherwise available in the United States. Pharmaceuticals will also not be touched by this 10%. So it's fascinating to look at the list of what's excluded. However, they did note that the de minimis exception will continue to be suspended. So remember, the de minimis exception usually allows you to bring goods in that are valued at less than $800. The Trump administration had suspended that, so no, they want duties applied under that threshold as well, and the 10% new tariff will apply to those as well. So it's a very broad, very detailed and complex set of issues here. The administration was clearly ready, and they have already started to pounce with tariffs to backfill what would otherwise have come in now that IEEPA tariffs have stopped.
So uncertainty continues and a lot of careful navigation to follow as far as businesses are concerned. All right, thanks for that. Let's turn to the State of the Union address tomorrow. Beth, there's, the IEEPA case has been the topic in the news amongst, our colleagues. Is it going to play big at the address tomorrow, do you think?
So taking a step back from that question a little bit, I guess the short answer is probably. The reason I say probably is my step back was going to be about the president. We know he's very unscripted. And we know that, when the Supreme Court decision came out, he said to the justices, all except 3, I think I'm very disappointed. I think the word disgrace or ashamed was used. So the president obviously has strong feelings about this, and sometimes those latest in time feelings feed into his public-facing events. So I don't know how many of our audience typically watches State of the Union addresses. They are not the most exciting things to watch, but the Supreme Court is usually sitting up in front, like right in front of the president. So it might be that this topic is very front of mind just because visually he will be looking right at them during this address. And that has some, important implications for agenda setting in the year going forward, in the legislative year, and for policymakers going forward. There's also a bunch of other stuff going on, though, that could be in the mix. The president's polling numbers on immigration are down. The State of the Union is happening in the middle of the DHS funding fight. There are some foreign policy issues with Iran, for instance, that might come up. And there are bigger questions around affordability, economic performance, economic indicators. So there's a lot of things that could come up. Usually these State of the Union addresses are about 2 things: agenda setting and providing a venue for political confrontation. And so I expect we'll see both. But the wild card, and I know we say this all the time, the wild card is the president. We'll see how he reacts night of.
Right. And I know you said it wasn't that exciting, but I will say that being in Washington, there are State of the Union watch parties. So
it's true.
And I've been to a few, so they are very exciting.
Yeah, there's yes. drink specials. Yes. There's a DC bubble economy around this political performance.
Yes.
So there's definitely that too. You're right.
So our group here, we always go in looking for and listening for tax themes and what that might relate to or how it affect tax policy conversations. So any inkling at all about whether any tax themes might come up?
Yeah, so I said there was a DC economy around this. This is true in terms of a political economy. So typically when these State of the Union addresses happen, in Congress, there's a lot of churn around, will the president mention a thing that is important to me? But there's a lot of organization in the agencies about putting forward themes to the White House. Again, we don't have a typical president. This might not be a typical year. That being said, what we're really going to watch out for, what the tax team here is really going to watch out for, is any announcement on the economic agenda moving forward. So affordability issues, I think those are going to still be key in the midterms, as we've said ad nauseum since those special elections in 2025. And I think that this is a chance for the president to really kind of push, 1, any economic indicators that look positive, and 2, any issues on affordability that could agenda set for Congress. I will be looking out on the IEEPA front for anything on tariffs and getting Congress involved there. That seems really unlikely. The administration seems to have set up an administration-only kind of unilateral procedure where they don't need to involve Congress. The president has said he doesn't want to involve Congress, but we're still going to listen for it because it has big impacts in the midterms. The Republicans don't particularly, they're quite divided on the tariff issue, right. And so that could create some legislative churn. And finally, I'm going to listen for any indication, they're in the affordability context, tariff context, otherwise, on are we going to see another reconciliation bill? Because that has enormous tax implications. Right now, likelihood seems very low. Senate and House seem to be going in a bipartisan direction. It's only about 5 months we have until midterm election season really kicks in. but the president has a lot of power over this Congress. And so if he says something, I think they're going to have to respond.
Right. All right, Beth, thank you so much. And Scott, thank you as well.
Pleasure. Thank you, Sindhu.
That does it for us this Monday, but there's much more to come on the implications of the IEEPA decision. And if you missed the episode about our first impressions of the Campty notice, it's linked in the description of this episode, along with a PwC tax insight on the notice and the latest week in review with Todd Metcalf. For those of you on the East Coast, stay warm and safe. Have a good week, everyone.